Liberia.
More often than not, Liberia is regarded as a place of war, poverty, and Ebola. But our forests and its animals alone make people think of Liberia as a beautiful place. So, let's protect our forests.
My people, yeah, let's protect our forests.
Protect it all. Protect it all.
My people, yeah, let's protect our forests.
Protect it all. We must protect it all.
Liberians, our forest is rich, like paradise in Africa. It's the place where this animal lives. Our animals are unique to the world. The forest
Make it rain.
the forest
Protect us.
The forest
It's the home of our wildlife.
The forest make Liberia rich. Let's keep our forest alive, so that we can stay alive. Liberians,
What do we have to show when we give the forest away?
my people, what thing we will get to?
Why will we benefit when we sell our forest?
Liberians, don't destroy the forest.
What do we have to show when we give the forest away?
What do we have to show when we break it down?
Why will we benefit when we sell our forest?
How our children will live without the forest.
Good afternoon and a pleasant welcome to another interesting edition of the program Forest Hour on OKFM 99.5.
Forest, so
This
that
program is brought to you by the Liberia Forest Media Watch with sponsorship from the European Union through the French Development Agency and Semempo in Finland.
tourists to come and see.
My name is Matthias Labini. I'm here with my colleague Joy Madiemo. We are here every Thursday 4 to 5 o'clock to talk about forest-related issues. The natural resource sector of Liberia is plagued with lots of illegalities, and we are here to highlight those illegalities.
Our forest,
Protect it all. Protect it all.
my people, yeah, let's protect our forests.
Protect it all. We must protect.
Today we've brought to you again another interesting talking point.
For hope.
If you visited a group called the Gecko Project,
Forest alive.
there is a publication about Liberia that says Cyanide River. They came for the gold. They left villagers with poisoned water.
Can prosper.
And that is about the situation coming from Western Liberia, specifically the operation of Bea Mountain, Liberia. Bea Mountain, Liberia is causing serious problem in the Western region, specifically the people of Grand Cape Mount County. They're waking up to lots of terrible experiences in that area. Today, Bea Mountain is under the spotlight for the wrong reason.
But while
And this is not coming from our investigation, although we've reported about issues coming from mining areas and how citizens, Liberians, are experiencing a lot of problems in those areas. But our friends, our foreign journalist friends,
Let's keep our forest alive.
they have done some extensive research on some of the operations of the operation of Bea Mountain, Liberia, and they've done an article for that matter. In fact, it is published in the Associated Press, and it's titled "Liberia's Largest Gold Miner Repeatedly Spilled Dangerous Chemicals Records Show." Edward Davey and Alon Aviram will join us this afternoon on the Forest Hour show to talk about their research and share with us exactly what exactly they think about the situation there involving Bea Mountain and the people. Without much ado, let me welcome my colleague Joy Madiemo. Joy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Matthias Labendi. Good afternoon to the listeners out there. As usual, we have the alternative youth radio that is in Zosalova County, Voice of Papalo in Popolo City, Liberty Radio in Greenville, Sano County, Radio Halinki that is in the Kulahon District, Riverside Broadcasting Service in Riverside County, Top FM in Zweju, Grand Jide County, and the Voice of River G that is in the River G County. Because we don't have much time, so I'm not going to be giving any tip today. I guess Matthias will get right into it. Matthias.
Certainly, we have to get right into it because our foreign guests, our foreign colleagues, the journalists reporting for the Gecko Project, And by the way, in case you want to find out what the Gecko Project is all about, it is basically an independent and non-for-profit, media house that's dedicated on reporting on environmental issues, specifically land, climate change, forest, and how inhabitants of those environments are treated by companies that step forward and say we are here to do operation in this area and how these people are faring. Today, our colleagues are joining us from the United Kingdom to share with us their own experiences as they have gone through investigation in the area. Just be reminded that this is a pre-recorded interview, and Joy and I sat down with these people and had a conversation with them, and today now they're here on the show to share their own experiences. Thereafter, we are going to open the lines to hear from you, members of the public. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Don't touch the dial. Your publications, both the long, the short, as well as the photo essay you provided. It's a lengthy read. It's a well-researched, article. But one thing that struck my attention is, I don't know whether it is Gecko Project or Gecko Project. I want us to begin by first knowing, what is the Gecko or Gecko Project. Kindly give me the referral pronunciation of it. Ed, you want to go first?
Sure. It's called Gecko Project. Gecko is like a small lizard. The small lizard that can walk up walls, which has big toes.
Yeah, the small lizards in the homes. Yeah, Gecko Project.
Yeah, it's so called because it was founded initially to do investigations in Indonesia. And in Indonesia at that time, there was a good anti-corruption police team who were nicknamed the Geckos, and they were taking on corrupt cops who were nicknamed the Crocodiles. So it was called. So they used to joke in Indonesia it was the gecko versus the crocodile. So when my colleagues set the organisation up to do investigations into environment and corruption in Indonesia, he named it the Gecko Project because they were kind of helping the geckos.
What we've read about you is that the Gecko Project is a non-profit newsroom that investigates the role of land use in some of the most pressing global challenges: climate change, deforestation, the collapse of biodiversity, food security, and the rights of marginalized communities. Is it based on this particular objective you have, that's why you gain interest in reporting on Liberia, specifically the mining sector?
Yeah, that's right. So the Gecko Project looks at the kind of overlap between environmental harm, environmental crimes, extractive industries, corruption, and companies that are bending the rules or breaking the rules, and how they get around laws that are meant to protect environment and local communities. So we've done a lot of work in Southeast Asia over the years, and we're now just beginning to report on the similar issues in West Africa. We've launched a new series called West Africa's Disappearing Rainforests, which is looking at the factors causing the destruction of rainforests right across West Africa. So not just in Liberia, but also in Ghana and in Sierra Leone. And we're publishing a series of investigations across those countries over the next few months with the Associated Press. And we're finding a lot of the same factors behind deforestation in all those countries.
I know there are so many investigations that you could have done. What prompted you to investigate in the Bea Mountain in Liberia?
First of all, it's the biggest gold exporter from Liberia, and gold is one of the two biggest minerals exported from Liberia, and mining is obviously really important for Liberia, and trying to find that balance between developing the economy and protecting the rainforests. But secondly, because the range of harms that I was hearing being caused was so varied, I thought it needed investigation. It wasn't just a question of cutting down rainforests, polluting rivers, and maybe Alon can talk a bit about that later. It was vulnerable communities finding their farms being trashed by elephants who've been driven out of the mining area. It was people whose houses are being knocked down, they say, by being used in the mine without any compensation. And I'm sure you'll recall the protests just over almost 2 years ago, where villagers protested against the operations of the mine, and then it turned into there was quite serious violence, and 3 people sadly lost their lives. We also heard unreported incidents of police violence there. So the reason we focused on it was the sheer range of harms that have been caused by this company's operations, and ultimately, mining should be a blessing for Liberia if done well and responsibly. It should be a blessing for Liberians to have all these resources under their feet, and yet, in the case of these vulnerable communities, it's been a curse, not a blessing.
Hi, my name is Alon Aviram, and I'm Ed Davey's colleague, reporter at the Gecko Project. And I was just going to add that this is, of course, a deeply Liberian story. The people who are being affected by the issues that Ed was just describing are Liberians. They're the people who are experiencing the harms, the issues that Ed just set out. But this is also very much an international story, and I think that's where one of the things that brought this story to us as well was that, there are, this Bea Mountain is, as you may know, international in many ways. It's controlled by a Turkish family, or the son of a Turkish billionaire. Murathan Gunal is the owner of the holding company above Bea Mountain, and that holding company is registered in Jersey. And you have the gold itself moving to a refinery in Switzerland before it enters global markets. So there are so many different elements to this story which take it from Liberia to the global stage as well. And I think that's really important to emphasize as well in terms of how we understand these companies and how they conduct themselves and where they sit on the global stage.
Just to add to what Alon was saying there, I mean, so the gold mined by Bea Mountain ultimately ends up in the supply chains of Apple and also Nvidia, which is the world's biggest company at the moment, most valuable company that makes all the microchips being used for the AI revolution. So I think readers of these stories around the world might think, oh, this deforestation, these impacts on local people sound terrible, but what's it got to do with me? Whereas if they have an iPhone in their pocket, there's every chance that some of that gold mined directly from this part of Grand Cape Mount County is in their iPhone, it's in their pocket. So it illustrates how connected the world is and how consumers all around the world, in the States, in Europe, in the Far East, everywhere, are actually tied harms that we've been documenting on the ground.
I need you to speak with me based on your research, based on the interaction you have with the people. The story is detailed. We're going to go in depth of this story. But what do you think is the missing link in the operation of Bea Mountain in Liberia, given that it is repeatedly violating the rights of the people, it is repeatedly violating environmental laws, causing contamination, causing harm in the area, but nothing seems to be done? What do you think is missing?
Something is not working, because quite clearly you have a company that's willing to break the rules in order to increase its profits or to try and save money. That's what the company insider, what company insiders who we spoke to said. But companies will always try to do that. You're always going to have companies that try to push the boundaries of what's acceptable or break the rules. So then it falls to the nation state or the regulator or the agencies to try and stop that. And in this case, clearly that's not happened because it's continued for so many years. There's only been one fine. We can't explain why the fine was initially $99,000 and then was reduced to $25,000 after such a long period of environmental breaches. So it takes two to tango. You have a company that's breaking the rules, but you also have regulators that clearly are not doing a good job of holding their feet to the fire. Had they been, perhaps they'd have changed their ways. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Alon?
Yeah, something that really jumped out at me when we were reading through the Liberian Environmental Protection Agency report. These are investigations that had been carried out by the EPA themselves into pollution from Bea Mountain. We had 4 of these reports that the EPA originally published and then took down from its website. What was very interesting was in multiple reports, the technicians, so the EPA guys, men and women who were on the grounds, taking water samples, finding breaches of pollution limits, they were recommending levied on Bea Mountain for violation. And the executive, for reasons unknown, did not heed to their requests. They didn't listen to the technicians on the ground from what I can see, from what we could see. So there seems to be a gulf between the people doing the hard work on the ground, taking the river samples, speaking to locals about the impacts of these things, and then the executive not acting on it. Now, when we reached out to the Liberian EPA and we asked them, why was there only one fine? And then we find out that it was reduced as well to $25,000. They were very keen to distance themselves from the previous administration. So sort of cast this as an issue of the administration of old, and that the administration today is a different beast and is working very differently and is committed to high standards. Whether that's being reflected on the ground, that's a question that can only be answered by the technicians, the experts who are doing those studies, and the communities themselves.
Ultimately, I think time will tell here, because in any country, sometimes you get regulators that are not holding companies to account. So if you accept the precept that in this circumstance the regulator's not done a good enough job of holding Bea Mountain to account, then it falls to the elected politicians to make that happen. That's why people elect governments to look after their own interests. So let's see what happens. We're still not that far into the new administration. The previous mining minister, Honourable Will Not Pay, was very outspoken. He made a very outspoken comment to us. He's now been replaced. I contacted the new minister to see if he'd like to comment. I haven't heard anything back from him. Let's see if the new administration is as good as their word. Let's see if the EPA is as good as its word. So that the proof will be in the pudding, really.
Let's remind the listeners following the Forest Hour show that we are having a conversation with two international journalists joining us from the Gecko Project. The Gecko Project is a non-profit media house that does investigations and report on various issues about the environment. They focus on the role of land use in some of the most pressing global challenges: climate change, deforestation, the collapse of biodiversity, food security, and the rights of marginalized communities, like we are focusing right now on Bea Mountain operation in Liberia. You mentioned about how vocal the previous minister was, and you've tried reaching out to the current minister. You've not gotten a response. But let me take you again into your report. We at the Liberia Forest Media Watch, we feel heartbroken when people destroy the environment, when people hurt wildlife. Your report indicates in a particular paragraph that the spills contaminated an ecosystem home to rare species like the African draft crocodile, hornbills, and the endangered western chimpanzee. Of the 17 fish species found near the mine, 3 are already considered under threat. Multiple villagers reported seeing dead and dying fish floating down the river after a pollution incident confirmed by the EPA. You had a conversation with some professional people like a toxicologist. You spoke with an F scientist, Dr. Jonathan. With all of the information they share with you, their analysis they provided, what can you say to Liberian listeners following this show about the repercussion of Bea Mountain's operation in that area in 5 to 6 years to come?
I can just speak to that. So we took the data that we got from the EPA files and from the interviews and the work that Ed did when speaking with people on the ground as well, to international experts, as you say, toxicologists and various other environmental scientists and people with expertise in the mining industry and in regulation of pollution. And they were, without fail, all of them surprised, to put it politely, by what they were seeing, what was being recorded in these reports and in this data. They were like, they were telling us this is unusual. This isn't just something that, I think quite often when people think about the mining industry, they think, okay, these things happen. This is just part and parcel of how extractive industries work. There is pollution. There are these sorts of incidents. People will always complain. But I think that is unfair on the people who are protesting and raising their voices about this, purely on the basis that, people who've worked within this world of regulation and scientific environmental inspections, they were seeing this data, these figures for cyanide, arsenic, other contaminants, other chemicals that were entering the waterways Management Institute, and this is a global body that manages cyanide, and he said that these types of events were very uncommon, and he's looking at incidents all over the world. And then what we see is that Bea Mountain had previously been signed up to this code. Previously, Bea Mountain had said, we are going to comply with the best of international standards. And then in 2020, they exited that code. They said, effectively they said, we're not going to be committing to these high standards. And then what we see after that is we see a couple of pollution events that occur that really appear to have damaged environmental, like fish, and killed fish, and posed a real risk to human health, according to these experts who we spoke with as well.
So just to put your listeners in the picture as to how and why this happened, when you mine gold, obviously it doesn't come out of the ground as solid gold. It comes out as ore, and you need to separate the pure gold from all the rest of the rock. And it just so happens that the things that are good at separating the pure gold from the raw material you dig out of the ground are cyanide and arsenic, which are deadly poisons. Like particularly cyanide is one of the deadliest poisons known to man. So mining companies all around the world use cyanide to separate that gold out. What you then have to do is to take the leftover sludge, which is full of cyanide, and you have to keep it safe. You have to build a big dam around it effectively and keep it safe and process it, and not let that cyanide back into the environment. Whereas what we were being told by company insiders and by officials we spoke to is that the facilities that the company had built were just not good enough to stop this happening, and they had plenty of warnings from consultants, from experts that their facilities weren't good enough, but yet there was no investment to make it safe. And then to go back to your question about the repercussions on the communities, I visited one village called Gecko, which is a beautiful village in the rainforest. They've been there for a few generations, by a river called Marvo Creek, which is again a beautiful river that they used to use for fishing, for washing, for drinking water. And now the land and the river is so toxic that they're having to be relocated to some different land. They say that the land that they're being moved to is not as good for farming. Also, they're no longer near the graves of their ancestors. It's an Islamic part of the country, and it's very important for them to be near the graves of their ancestors, which they consider as sacred. So they've been taken apart from them. Apparently some small compensation has been given for the new housing they temporarily had to have. But to the people I spoke to, nothing can really compensate for losing the land that they've been attached to for generations, that they grew up in, that was their parents and their grandparents up in. So really, it's completely turned their lives upside down.
Based on the project, you interview a Canadian toxicologist called Mende Oscar, am I right?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
He described the company action as a sustained negligence. Why do you think he described the company action as a sustained negligence? Did he give any further explanation on that?
Yeah, Mandy Osgard. When we spoke with her, we provided her the information that we had, and she said it amount, if I'm paraphrasing here, but amounted to sustained negligence. And I think what she was saying was that you could give a company like the benefit of the doubt, perhaps, if there were one pollution incident, if there was one like major spill, but seeing reports of multiple spills over multiple years, there's very little justification that can be given to that. This is someone who works across the mining industry and has looked at pollution spills in many different places, and she just put it in plain words that this appears to be sustained negligence. This is a company failing, or at least a company which failed for many years to stop pollution, really deadly toxic pollution, from seeping into the water, breaching Liberian law, and posing a real risk to people and the environment.
In the project, you mentioned that inspectors were stopped from entering the labs of the Bea Mountain. Can you explain how were the inspectors stopped?
So this is from a report in 2020.
Okay.
The technicians from the EPA they visited Bea Mountain, and they were inspecting or trying to inspect the mine and the facility, and they wrote in this EPA report that they tried to access the laboratory within Bea Mountain and to examine testing data, and that they were blocked by the company. They didn't go into any more depth on that. We tried to get more information on the circumstances of that, but that's pretty shocking as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen that written in a report of this kind before, that there were government officials were being blocked by a private company from seeing the testing data, which could give presumably evidence, clues on the standards of the health of the water and the environment, which has a direct impact on communities downstream. So the company stopped them in 2020. We don't know if that happened before or after, but we know that it happened in 2020 according to the Liberian EPA.
Edward and Alon, thanks so kindly, guys, for joining us on this interview. It's a great experience having a conversation with you, foreign journalists who gain interest in impoverished countries like Liberia, reporting on the happenings here. We are excited to speak with you, and I'm very sure our listeners are also. They're going to tell us when we open the lines to have a conversation with them. But let me get to another point of this particular conversation. I've been seeing the photo essay you provided. When you look at the pictorial of the report, the investigation you conducted, is quite heartbreaking. We journalists do not personalize stories. We report seeking change in the environment. Since the 30th of January, your report was published by the Associated Press, and so what have you experienced so far? Sometimes companies try to access the emails of individual journalists, or as well as institutions like the Associated Press, to provide rebuttal to publications they release out there. Has there been anything that you noticed so far since your report was released?
We've written to Mountain and also to the owners in Turkey repeatedly, asking them for comment again and again, and they just completely ignored us. And so far, they've completely ignored the publication as well, which I think tells you something. We've noticed a lot of interest within the kind of the sphere that we operate in, which is that world of journalism, of environment. I've been getting a lot of messages from lawyers, from environmentalists, from journalists who've seen the story and are interested in it. And I think it's struck a nerve, because it's just very stark to have cyanide poisoning rivers, basically. Into what happens next, we'll have to see. Sometimes you publish a story like this and nothing happens. Sometimes you publish a story like this and behaviour changes. We'll just have to see. In terms of impacts or repercussions or fallout, it can be a slow burner, and change never happens overnight.
I'd also add that something that I've seen after publishing this story is that again, while this is a Liberian story, the issues of managing pollution, stopping, kind of seemingly boring issues to people who aren't in this world. Like, how do you make a waste dam stronger and able to stop pollution from entering the environment if there's lots of rainfall? These sorts of kind of technical questions are very important and go beyond Liberia. They are listeners may have heard about a disaster that happened in Zambia, in the copper region last year. There's been similar instances in Latin America, in Indonesia as well. So I think that there are things that need to happen within Liberia on this in terms of like the better management and oversight of this facility, but there are also like international questions about how can we improve the mining industry as a whole, which this report has been of interest to kind of people outside of the country as well, I think, because they're like, oh, this is happening in Liberia now. These are issues that we're already kind of interested in. We want to kind of engage in that conversation.
And you're right, it is upsetting. We're journalists. We need to be professional. We need to be impartial. And I hope our article is impartial. And certainly we've got no opinion in the article. It's factual, and we've come to the story with a completely open mind. But that having been said, as a human, you can't not be affected when you meet the people who've been affected by it. I interviewed a mother in the village of Kinjor in Grand Cape County, whose son was shot dead in the protests, shot dead by police, I should say, in protests against Bea Mountain. She was in tears. It was a really difficult interview. Of course, you deeply, deeply feel for someone like that. I met a 3 months pregnant mother who was beaten and gassed by police putting down one of these protests. Thank goodness she didn't lose that baby, but my wife was pregnant at that exact time while I was in Liberia, and I was thinking, how would I feel if it was my wife who'd been knocked unconscious by tear gas and beaten by police? It is heartbreaking. You just have to try and remain professional and remain objective. I also wanted to say on that we do a lot of work like this in different countries, and we see the same scenario play out time and again all over the world, and it's often the same playbook by these companies. And one of the issues you see time and again is, as in Liberia, the local people are the ancestral owners of this land. So in Liberia, they have legal rights to this land, and when they agreed to hand the land over to Bea Mountain for mining, they were supposed to benefit from letting them mine on their ancestral land. So Bea Mountain promised all kinds of benefits to local communities, so jobs, including senior management jobs, training for locals so that they could do complex, more well-paid work for the company, infrastructure, schools. There have been some token benefits provided, but in general, the villages that I visited, there was a feeling that those promises had been broken and that they'd been left with virtually nothing. And the biggest of those villages, Kinjor, when we arrived there, when our reporting team arrived, it was me and it was a photographer from the Associated Press. I've never been to a village where I encountered such anger about the way that they've been treated ever in my career, and I've been doing this for quite a few years. And we drove there, got out of the Land Cruiser, and went to go to the Palava hut to meet the headman of the village. And before we even got to the meeting place, young men of the village ran over and started telling us what happened to them and how angry they were. And understandably, the young men of the village were almost angry at us, because they said that people had come to the village before wanting to help, nothing ever happened. And as I say, I've been doing this a long time, and I've been to a lot of villages around the world where sadly they've been treated similarly by mining companies, by oil companies, by big agribusiness. But I've never been to a village where there was that much anger as I saw, as when I was in Liberia a few months ago. But that's a memory that all of those memories will never leave me.
Given your experiences you have had in the village for this investigation, and like Dr. Jonathan stated in your research, that even several months of contamination will be alarming. The fact that this has gone for several years raises serious concern. Do you think that this entire problem, given the amount of damages that have been caused, do you think it can still be fixed?
There are several answers to that. The first thing I'd say is that Liberian rainforests are still massive, right? It's got more rainforest left than anywhere else in West Africa. And when you look at the total size of the contaminated areas compared to all of Liberia's rainforests, they're very small. But that having been said, the company is also exploring in Riversess County in southeastern Liberia to open up new areas, and also is far from the only mining company that is operating or seeking to operate in Liberia. In fact, Forest Trends, which is a non-governmental organisation that does a lot of research in Liberia, found that half of all the protected forest areas in Liberia are currently covered by concessions for mining. While the area that's contaminated already by Bea Mountain is small compared to the whole of Liberia, unless the basic infrastructure of accountability and regulation is fixed, this could happen again and again on a bigger scale. As for the contamination of the ground, I don't have the scientific knowledge personally to know whether this can be cleaned. I mean, I do know that cleaning polluted areas is very expensive, particularly if they're cleaning waterways and wetland areas is really expensive. I think the feeling of injustice on behalf of the communities could be addressed because, you know, the company is exporting, well, in one 18-month period, it exported $500 million worth of gold. The gold price is at record highs, and there's just been a dip in the gold price just the last couple of days, but historically gold hit its all-time record high about a week ago, so that there's money to provide what was promised if the desire was there.
One of the things that we found while reporting on this story was that there was some data. There was some data, right, that we could work with in terms of showing that the EPA had found high levels of cyanide, arsenic, copper sulfate, other things that you wouldn't want to see entering water, especially water that's used by communities. But one of the things that we found was that there's a real lack of data as well. There's a real lack of testing. There are people who are claiming that they may have been harmed, that they felt sick, like we reported in our story, from eating fish that had died after the pollution incidents that we reported on. But without kind of hard medical data, you're dealing with unknowns in unknowns, and some of the experts we spoke with said that there's a real need for communities, for the peace of mind of communities, and for accountability and so on, for there to be more testing of how this contamination, the incidents we know of, and any others we don't know of, how they may have affected people and the environment, short-term and long-term. So I think, you know, from a journalistic standpoint, that would be very interesting. I think if there could be, you know, more testing done to find out if and how this has impacted Liberian communities longer term as well.
Bea Mountain has an inscription written on its signboard. It says, "Safety is our value." Do you think it's a marker of the people of the Western Liberia?
I think the facts that we've reported will enable people to make their own minds up on that. But I can paint a picture from some of the documents that Alon retrieved, some of the EPA documents, which will again tell their own story. There's photos of rivers turned bright blue due to the copper sulfate which is leaked into them. And you don't need to be a scientist to know that that's not right. We've seen photos taken by local people of dead fish washed up on rivers. So I think I would not like to comment on that other than just to repeat the facts that we documented, and people will make their own minds up on that.
Okay, have you shared a copy of this report to the Bea Mountain? And if so, have there been any form of response from them?
We wrote to them detailing all of the allegations, and we didn't hear back from them. And one of the things that we're incredibly careful to do is to give companies the fullest opportunity to respond, because there are two sides to every story. So even we went to the lengths of we were trying to get the Turkish owners. We were trying to ensure that the Turkish owners had the chance to respond to the story. So we even went to the lengths of hiring a Turkish freelance journalist to ring up their office and in Turkish ask them if they wanted to comment. So that journalist got confirmation from the office in Turkey that our emails have been received, and there's been nothing back. So you can't force companies to make a comment if they don't want to. I mean, there are stories in local newspapers in that part of Liberia to the effect that Bea Mountain has provided some facilities, some small schools and things like that. So I want to say that is out there as well. However, that's not the impression the local people have when you go there. So while I wouldn't dispute that some benefits have been provided, all I can say is that in the villages I went to, people felt that they got almost nothing for their lives being turned upside down for the pollution of their water sources.
Edward and Alon, thanks so much for joining us on this interview. This has been a very great time having a conversation with you, tapping on your experiences about reporting different environments in Africa and other parts of the world, specifically our country, Liberia, coming right at our back door and telling our own story. That's quite interesting, and it's heartbreaking that we are reading through this data. Let me start with the closing questions. Let me start with you first, Alon, and I'll conclude with Edward. What do you want Liberian listeners of this show, the Forest Hour show, as well as people who may go on the Associated Press website to read your article, what do you want them to take away from this publication, and what is your expectation from government in terms of action? Alon, you go first.
Yes, so before I start, just the qualifier that I'm a journalist here, not a campaigner, but I think that what I would be my kind of key top line, I guess, about this reporting that we found out was that this wasn't just a one-off occurrence. These were repeated violations over multiple years. There were warnings by international consultancies before the project, before the mine even started operating, that there was a real risk of pollution from the mine, that there was a real risk of drinking water standards being broken by pollution from the mine, and then this went on to occur. And there were occurrences where villagers were saying, look, there was one major incident in 2022 where villagers were the ones that alerted the EPA, alerted the government to pollution in the Marvo Creek, in the river that ran past their village. And it was, they were the ones who notified the government, not the company itself. In fact, the company itself missed the reporting deadline to tell the government that there was pollution in the rivers downstream of its facilities. So this is something that occurred over multiple years, and there were real challenges, to put it mildly, in regulating that company. So I think that's my kind of top line is this isn't a flash in the pan, a one-off event. This is something that happened over multiple years. Villagers were regulators at best struggled to control it.
I guess what I would add to that is that Liberia is a democracy, and Liberia has a free press. We're discussing these issues freely on air right now, and that is Liberia's great advantage and power in this scenario. Whereas there are lots of countries in Africa and the Middle East that are not a democracy and that don't have a free press. Liberia had a successful, free, peaceful transfer of power in the recent election, and again, lots of countries don't have that we report from. So that means that actually the ordinary people listening to this, if they care about this, they have some power here. They have the power to contact their elected representatives. They have the power to change their elected representatives. And if you agree with the precept that there's been a failure of accountability here as well as the harms caused by the company, then at least Liberia has the democratic structures and the freedom of the press for this to be challenged and debated through normal open routes. And there are lots of countries that would wish to be in that situation. There are lots of people living in countries who would wish to be in that situation where there was at least a process to pressure for change.
Thank you so much, Alon, and thank you, Edward. It was a pleasure having a conversation with you. We're going to keep in touch, and we will now move on to the public
to hear from them. Thanks so much for joining us today and giving us your time to have this conversation with you.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Great questions. I really appreciated it. And I just wanted to say again what a pleasure it was to visit Liberia. It's a beautiful country. People were so friendly and warm and welcoming. And I'd love to go back as a tourist one day.
And that's right here, our guest there from the Associated Press, the Gecko Project. That has been a very great interaction with Edward, Davey, and Alon Aviram, joining us there from the United Kingdom. We had a lengthy conversation with them yesterday, Joy and I. I hope you have your takeaway. My takeaway from the entire conversation is that is a part where Edward mentioned that it takes two to tango. It takes two to tango. So like I shared with one of the elders one day, we were doing some analysis, and I shared with the person that when there is a seller, there's a buyer.
Right.
So in order for a foreign company that to carry out such contaminations, to carry out some violations of environmental laws, destroying, the livelihoods of the people waters and areas they used to go to fish, the chemical is destroying everything. It takes a government to be lenient on stringent action taken against that particular company,
Right.
to enable that company to keep doing what it is doing. So with the company would only have such energy, will only have such it would continue to do that. The audacity to do so. I think that's the word I was trying to come through. Yes, it will only have that audacity to do what it's doing because the government is not doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
You listen to one of the toxicologists, in fact, the F scientist mentioned in the report that even is it 7 months? Even 7 months,
several months.
even
It's
7 months of violation or contamination is concerning. So what that man is saying, these are people that speak with specialty. It's not like our society where most time you wake up in the morning, the moment you have a conversation, everybody is an analyst, everybody wants to phone in on the talk show and just quickly go into analyzing whatever issue. When these guys did their interview, what they did, they reached out to specific people based on their background in that particular field.
Exactly.
Imagine and Alon and Edward having a conversation with a toxicologist, telling them about the danger of the chemical on the ground. He said to them, no, there's a system, there is an institution responsible to ensure that people use chemicals, most especially cyanide, use the cyanide in a particular way. Right. There's a way you can contain it so that it does not affect the entire environment. Now, that land is being destroyed. We are talking about just the water that's been destroyed today. Eventually, crops may not be able to grow in that area. Trees may not even grow there. All right? To have a whole village thinking about relocating,
it's concerning.
It's concerning. And what is the government doing about it?
And just to add to Matthias Labendi,
Right.
The government, they should be protecting the people in the sense when these companies come in to invest in the economy, they are coming in to invest in the economy so that the people can benefit. It should not be the other way around. They should not come and harm the people's life.
Right.
And then you say you're building roads in school. Who will attend the schools?
Who is going to attend the schools? And so there today, Bea Mountain is what we're talking about. And this is not a research or investigation done by the Liberia Forest Media Watch. It's an investigation done by the Gecko Project. Is GECKO, Gecko Project, search it. Or better still, visit the Associated Press, and you're going to read exactly what we've been discussing. Our colleagues from the United Kingdom join us to participate on the show today. Edward, David, and Alon Aviram, thanks so kindly for joining us. But let's have a conversation now with you, our valuable listeners. Call us on the numbers. Joy, the numbers.
0777 700 995, 0777 700 995, 0555 995 995, 0555 995 995. These are the numbers that you can call to give your view on what you think about this project or this investigation. The numbers again are 0777 700 995, 0777 700 995, 0555 995 995, 0555 995 995. Matthias, do you have a specific number for those in the various counties that want to participate?
Oh yeah, but let's take this person here.
Okay.
Let's talk to this person. Hello. Yes, let's hear you.
Thank you.
What's your name?
This is Sonny BX.
Let's hear you, Mr. Yates.
I joined you for around bombing country this year around the downtown Bell.
Go ahead.
I listened to the journalists, the guys who are reporting about Bea Mountain. Matthias, I think our people need to wake up, and especially our lawmakers from the Western region, especially those that are from Grand Creek County. Matthias, if you come in Kitman, especially the new area that Bea Mountain is about to operate called Bangoma.
I know that place.
If you go Bangoma, Matthias, you will be sorry for our people. Today, the company have been successful to take our people from Bangoma according to them, build a new home for them. But when you come there is no safe drinking water for our people, Matthias. The places that our people will go, I've got, mind you, they're about to use chemical like they did in Kinjo. Our people, their own resources, they are breaking the turkeys for little of nothing.
Okay. Thank you so much, my brother. Let's hear from this other person. Hello.
Yeah, Matthias, thank you.
Let's
This
hear
is
you.
Brown Tate.
Mr. Tate,
from
go ahead.
Monrovia.
Let's
Yeah.
hear you.
I listened to the interview and think you enjoyed so much. But my issue is that even the man, the last interview you had, he said even before the exploration of that mine, the mine was already polluted. So it means that we got to be very mindful. So imagine, naturally, if the mine, around the mine is polluted, water polluted, then you talk about chemical that the point is called sunlight. You know, I listened to the lake in my Buya one time, sunlight, they got a pill called sunlight. That sunlight there, when you go into the wall front, by the time they can put it on your leg, if you in a constrained place, you're not able to remove yourself. You just put it on your tongue, you die. So it's a dangerous chemical the people using over there. And one guy said on one time on one of the shows that sunlight, that chemical there, if you're working with Bea Mountain and you're working in a specific area, you're not supposed to work there for more than 7-8 months. They're supposed to pay you off.
Okay.
Or else you will die before even 1 year pass.
Thank you, sir. Let's hear from this other person. Hello. Yeah, hello. Just want to hear from your monitor. Let's hear you.
Yeah, Matthias and your co-panelists. This is Haji Famule, and I call you from Carwell.
Let's hear you, sir.
And interesting day, I'm a practicing journalist and also from Cape Mount, as you may be aware. So I think the report has, concluded everything we can say about the Bea Mountain in Cape Mount. But the fact that you have a mining company that is destroying the county, and even those that are employed in the Bea Mountain are not even benefiting. That's what we're talking about the country itself. Imagine a company taking away 11 million every week from Bea Mountain, and annually are making more than $1 billion, and they are giving Liberia 0.2% coming back to the country. I think this is demeaning. This is the time that the government look into it and to go back to that concession to see exactly what can be done to review that concession, because if the people leave today, what becomes of Cape Mount?
Okay.
I mean, it's dangerous, and I think the government should follow the lead and make sure that they can look at the concession that have been signed and the report so that they can be able to make their decision on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let's hear from this person. Hello.
How are you?
Let's hear you, sir. Mr. Gia.
Yeah, this is Joe. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Many happy returns, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. That issue of the guys' flag is of serious concern. It actually is a serious concern. The guys are taking up resources. They are taking the money and fighting, giving us small money with a dangerous situations. Because we don't, no one can determine now how the future will be like. Besides that, they should have had people that would do tree planting. But the guys, I don't know whether they are doing that as well. They are only liquidating that that area, and they are not doing anything that has to do with replanting of trees. So that's a serious concern. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for your contribution on the program this afternoon. This is Forest Hour. Let's hear from this last person on the program. This is Forest Hour on OKFM 99.5. It's brought to you by the Liberia Forest Media Watch with sponsorship from the European Union through the French Development Agency and Simempo in Finland. Today we had a conversation with two foreign journalists working with the Gecko Project, and they did a lengthy interview and investigation into the Bea Mountain operation in Western Liberia, talking about contamination and as well as violation of environmental laws and the damages caused in that area. The article has been published in the Associated Press newspaper. You want to check it out. It's quite interesting. It's a heartbreaking read. I must tell you. Let me alert you that as you're going to engage that article, you must prepare yourself. Maybe get your towel or your handkerchief or face towel to wipe your tears out, because you're going to cry your heart out, because it's quite a painful one. Joy, how would you like to close before we take leave of our audience?
Quick, do you know that the human body can live up to 2 to 3 days without food, without water, right? But with food on it. But then what shocked me is the human body can go up to 2-3 weeks with only water. Matthias, if the water in the environment is being destroyed, you're definitely haunting the people's lives. And that would be so bad. I think the government should step in and do better. They can do better. We know that they can do better. So I think they should step in and do better. Thank you.
Certainly. And it takes two to tango. That's the phrase that really caught my attention from Ed. It takes two to tango. It's just conflict is not made by an individual. To make confusion, there must be an opposite person. Somebody must be on the other side of the conflict. All right. So you alone cannot sit down, except there's a mental conflict. That is, you having issues in your mind. All right. But to have a physical conflict with yourself, I mean, it means that there must be somebody opposing certain things you're saying. So this, I'm saying, it means that to have the company continuously violating environmental laws, polluting the people environment, as well as causing harms, health hazards for the people in that area. Bea Mountain is a company that came to operate in a space, and this space is called Liberia. It is not a company that's operating in the entire country. The information the guys also shared is that the Bea Mountain is now trying to extend to Riverside, to the southeastern region of Liberia. So with the same pollution that we're talking about in Western Liberia might extend to other parts of the country. Join us again next edition for another fascinating edition of the program, Forest Hour on OKFM 99.5. Thanks to our guys there from the Gecko Project, Edward, Davey, and Alon Aviram. I'm Matthias Labina. I've been here with my colleague Joy Madiemo.
One of the richest countries in the world, and that's because of our forests.